Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, where we unlock the pivotal stories that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm Dusty Holcomb, and on this show, we don't just talk about leadership, we decode it. In every episode, we sit down with the change makers who've walked through the fire, challenged the status quo, and emerged with wisdom worth sharing. These aren't just lessons, they're lived experiences, real moments that reveal the mindset, the resilience, and the clarity that comes from creating lasting impact. Today, you're going to hear one of those stories. Have you ever watched a room full of Fortune 500 heavyweights fall silent and then hang on every word? That's Molly Hunt's Tuesday. As the CEO of Thai Boy, she spent 25 plus years rewiring executives, leaders, and regular people like you and me, from companies like Coca-Cola to the Seattle Seahawks. And she's helped them speak so clearly that culture shifts on the spot. Armed with a psychology degree and a knack for turning nerves into magnetic energy, Molly helps people unlock and connect what matters most in their own hearts so they can connect with others. I'm just delighted that Molly's joining us today, and I can't wait to get into a conversation about how to really connect. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. Molly, thank you for taking time out. It's a busy season. It's a really busy season for you. And I appreciate you carving out time to chat with me and to share your story and some of the things that have shaped and formed you with our audience.
Oh, Dusty, it's a pleasure to be here with you. As you know, I've admired you from a distance for many, many years. So being a part of this podcast is super special for me too.
Well, it's a lot of fun to be able to have a chat with someone who really helped me realize the importance of communication and how communication isn't what you do to people, it's what you do for people in the creation of connection. But before we get into the litany of things that I know we want to talk about, let me ask you this. What's it like growing up as the daughter of old Big Deal?
Oh, big deal. You know, because I don't know anything any different, but Ty Boyd being the charlatan, the guy on the radio, the guy on TV, I just knew him as dad. And I will tell you this, he is by far the kindest, nicest, most humble human being that I have ever met. And as a surly teenager, I used to get mad at him for being too nice. And I'm not even kidding. And I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I joke with people because I say I only saw him mad maybe 5 times my entire life. And 3 of those were at Carolina football games.
For our audience that don't know who old Big Deal is, why don't you unpack that a little bit and give a little context to the nicest person that you ever knew and who thousands knew very well as well.
Well, old Big Deal, Ty Boyd, he is also my father, who he passed away at the beginning of the pandemic, but his legacy is so beautiful. And we're really, very, very lucky in our company to pave his legacy forward week after week, teaching people to do the very thing that he did so well. But it started when he was just a kid. He was 15 years old. He got into radio and television and was from the North Carolina area, and he loved it. And then he was asked to become a professional speaker because he loved it and was really good at doing that. And then almost 47 years ago, he had a chance experience where somebody said, "Hey, Ty, you are so good at connecting with people. You are so good about creating relationships, and you seem to do it so organically." And this gentleman, his name is Tom Carpenter. He said, "I've got a group of sales folks who they're really good. I mean, they're really performing, they're meeting their numbers, but they're missing an element that you do so well." And so he asked if my dad would come in and work with his team. And that was the beginning of the Excellence in Speaking Institute, which is really our foundational course that we offer. And that's what started Ty's passion, which was truly teaching people to do the very thing that he did so well.
Ty was a I don't know if you would call it a motivational speaker, an inspirational speaker, but I mean, he was on the stage with the likes in his time of Tony Robbins today, or any of the biggest names, but Ken Blanchard, Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, like Patricia Fripp. The names go on and on. That's a big deal, and it sounds like to you, he was obviously just dad. But when he goes in and he works with Tom Carpenter, and it turns into something that 47 years later has impacted thousands of lives. What was the most important lesson that he taught you about communication, about the power of connection?
So much of what he taught me was not even with words. It was just by his actions, which maybe that's the gift that I received with him, is watching him, and the way he treated other people was really a gift that maybe I took for granted now that we're having this conversation.
Give me an example if you don't mind. Yeah, go ahead. I want to hear, like, communication. We often think of it as the words, but man, you're talking about the actions.
It was this month, 4 years ago, where I delivered his eulogy, and I told this very story, but it was one of the greatest for me as a young child, impressionable child who's looking, your kids are looking at you. There was one morning, and this was, I think I was 8 years old, and my brother Elliot he was 11. And it was a Saturday morning, and my father had to go to the television station at the time, was WBT in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he had to go to the station to do some work. It was on a Saturday. And he decided he was going to take us with him. And at the end of that, we knew we were going to get Krispy Kreme donuts. So that was how we got in the car. But Elliot and I were sitting in the back of the car, and it was a frog strangling downpour. It was an absolute just dumping. And
that's a true Southern colloquialism right there.
It is. I know. But you can imagine it was dumping. And we always used this cut through outside of our neighborhood. We would cut through the neighborhood next door to us. And as we were driving through, there was this man who we had never seen before. And we go through that neighborhood every single day. And it didn't look like maybe he would have even been there. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was very clear he was outside of his own comfort zone. And it's dumping. And my father stopped the car, and he backed up, and he rolled the window down, and he just said, "Hop in. Where are you going?" Because that's where we're going. And he didn't once look back at myself or Elliot and say, "Don't you say anything. Don't you tell your mom. Don't you give any look." He never, it was nothing. And it was then I just realized you treat people with kindness, no matter where they are, and if it's different than us or whatever that might be, you lead with kindness.
I love that. It was just last night I was watching a video that Simon Sinek did, a recording he did with someone, and he was talking about the importance of those precious few memories that we have from our childhood, because we remember the things that shape us. We remember the things that frame us. And, we don't remember everything. There's wonderful, we have thousands of life experiences, but we remember the ones that matter, that create a difference. How has that framing experience at age 5.5 years old influenced your behavior? Like, what has it made you think about differently? And, one of your favorite phrases, and I steal this and use it all the time, so I promise I'll shut up and give you a chance to talk here, but one of your favorite phrases that you talk about anytime you're talking about, hey, we get to do this. We're going to go serve others. We get to do this. It's a privilege. It's a blessing. It's an honor. It's an obligation. It's all of those things. As you think about that life experience and a behavior or decision with kindness, leading with kindness, creating influence with kindness, just treating people with kindness, has it been active, or has it just been part of your operating system DNA that you've just done because you were so intentional about being kind? Give me an example or a story where you've chosen to be that kind or that kindness because of who your dad was.
I just think that you're going to get a lot further being kind. There was a time where I was a little late getting to the airport, and it was actually because I plugged it in the wrong way. But I called one of my colleagues and I said, "So are you at the gate?" And Dave says, "Molly, we're taking off."
You're a little late.
I was in the middle of finding a parking space, so it was very clear I was going to miss my flight. And so I went to I'm not going to say which, it doesn't matter which one I'm talking about, but no airline is really known for being there for you. So I went to the counter of the flight that I was going to take, and there were about 10 or 12 people in front of me who had their own agenda and had their own issues and had their own frustrations. And so patiently I'm waiting in the line. And as I'm waiting in that line, I'm just getting more mad and more frustrated. And so I get to the counter, and the guy across the counter, his name is Jay. I just remember that because of his name tag. And Jay did not even look up. He just said, "What do you need?" In that moment, I wanted to wring his neck. And that was not the right approach. And just taking a deep breath, I looked at him and called him by his name. And Dusty, you would have thought that the seas had parted and this bright light was shining down between the two of us. And he looked up at me and he said, "Do you know you're the first person to call me by my name?" Somebody just dignifying someone else who's doing, quite frankly, a thankless job. We had a nothing conversation. He looked for the next flight and he said, "You know what? Your flight leaves in 48 minutes. I've upgraded you to first class. Have a great day." So now I'm late for all of my flights.
I love that because saying someone's name is so powerful. And I had a mentor years ago that shared a similar story to you and said that, when you humanize the person on the other side of what for you might be a transaction, what you're really doing is you're creating a relationship and you're moving past a transactional element, some type of monetary exchange, some type of value exchange, but you're really getting into, a human exchange. And that really stuck with me. And I make it a point now to practice, because I would not say that I'm good at remembering names, but I make it a point to ask everyone their name and then repeat it back. Go to a server or whatever, even if they have their name tag on, I'll find a way to say something simple like, "Now, how do you pronounce that, John?" Maybe it's not John, but I'll do something like that, because people don't hear their names spoken, and not in it can't be in a self-serving way where you're like, "Hello, John," but it's just got to be natural. And I love that you do that.
Well, I think about the industry. They're invisible.
Totally.
But here they are. If they weren't there, we wouldn't have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about it, and one of the things I'm super keen on, it doesn't matter where we are, if we're out to dinner, it doesn't matter what the restaurant is instead of it just being a transaction where somebody's bringing me my food, when you acknowledge that person, then it becomes an experience. And again, then the experience is usually better. They'll go a step further. Their eyes are more on you. It's just a simple thing that makes such a big difference.
Makes such a big difference. Well, as you think about making a difference in the lives of others, and, I have the privilege of knowing a little bit about your organization from the inside, but then also having first stepped into an awareness of how powerful communication is when you don't think about it as something you do to someone, but something you do for someone. 15 years ago when I first was introduced to Ty Boyd, and I will fully admit that my proclivity was, I'm going to a speaking course. It's going to suck. And I don't want to do it because, I'd rather be dead, which is what the research says. People would rather do that than speak. But it's truly life-changing when you learn it's not about you. How many people do you think you have spoken in front of or to in a public speaking kind of way in your lifetime?
Do you mean with our courses as well as in speaking to audiences?
Audience engagements, tens of thousands?
Oh, yeah.
So I have to ask this question because I've always wondered for someone who is as accomplished as you and as polished and yet still human, do you still get nervous?
Yes, 100% of the time. Are you kidding me? And you said something just a minute ago. Geez, the greatest bit of advice that my father ever gave to me was what you just said was, it's not about you.
Mm.
It is so true, but we put so much focus on ourselves and we forget what our purpose is. But that's our DNA as well. We want to make sure we say the right things, do the right things, and we have that be perfect mentality. But I believe that was my dad's secret sauce was it's not about you.
I know that story, but I love that story. Would you mind sharing it? Because there's no comeuppance like your dad getting in your own head and delivering a backhanded wisdom in some ways. Can you share that story with us?
Sure. There was a time years ago where I had to speak to a lot of people. It was about 700 people, and that's a lot of eyeballs. And my parents happened to be in the audience. I had months to prepare, so I was completely prepared. There's no substitution for that. So I was definitely prepared, but I was so nervous. I walked up to my parents, the masters, before that presentation, and I asked my dad, I said, "Hey, do you have any pearls of wisdom?" And you guys, I don't even know what I was thinking in that moment, whether I was thinking he had some magic fairy dust that he was waited my whole life until that very moment. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting what he said. And that was, "Molly, this isn't about you." And in that moment, I wanted to throw up. I said, "Excuse me, this feels very much about me." But I did have that epiphany, and he was so right. We put that focus on ourselves, and I believe that's where we get tangled up here. But if we remember what the purpose is, and it doesn't even matter if you're talking to a room full of experts know that there's room to improve. And that's where you believe you make it about other people. They're going to pull some threads out of things that, even if they're the experts, they're going to pull those threads out of things that make a difference, those little nuances that come out. And so for me, it became, instead of it being me giving a presentation, it became me having a conversation, and felt more like being a teacher, which I enjoyed, versus being presenter. So it took that pressure off. I was still nervous, but it helped those butterflies fly more in formation rather than derailing me.
It's so funny that even now you get nervous and have the butterflies and have that. And I'm the same way. I'm like all a skitter when I'm having to go give a presentation or speak. What's your method? What's your process of calming the nerves, of preparing yourself to get through the first 5 seconds? Because after that, it's okay. But it's the first 5 seconds when you can't decide if you want to run away or puke. What's your process?
Well, I would say that first 5 seconds, for some people, it's the entire presentation that they're caught up in their heads.
Too true.
But for me, it's, if I'm not nervous, then I need to check myself, because I truly believe that the nerves say that this matters. This means I care, means I really want to provide that information for someone. So instead of me trying to push the nerves away anymore, I now put my arm around it and say, let's go. What keeps it from being derailing is, for me anyway, it's all that prep in advance. I'm working on a really difficult presentation right now, which you likely know, and it is keeping me up at night. I'm trying to find the right words. I want to make sure it's exactly what needs to be said. So I go through the tools and the techniques that we teach in our class to get things ready. And then I practice. And it starts to feel almost second nature. I'm still going to be really, really nervous when I deliver this talk. But I believe in the sweating in advance is what's going to make me comfortable and confident to know that it will land. It may not come out exactly the way I had intended, but I know it will be okay.
it will be more than okay. I know that for a fact. And, I love that you kind of reminded sometimes it is nervous for the entire time. And when you get done, you're still nervous because you want to make sure it landed or it made a difference and pressure, we manufacture all this pressure in our heads. Did you always know that you wanted to be a communicator, or maybe that's the wrong question? Did you always know that you wanted to help others become communicators?
No, as a matter of fact, I don't know about anybody else, but I wanted to do anything other than what my parents did.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, anything. And in my previous life, I wanted to be a professional golfer. That was what I wanted to do. I love sports. I'm a big sports fanatic. And my parents were just kind enough to let me fail over and over and over. But what happened was at one point in my previous life, as I was working on that golf career, I was working at a television station as well. And I was living in South Florida. And my whole family lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was missing them. I was homesick, quite frankly. And getting in the golf world is not easy. So I called my mom and said, "Oh, I miss you. I want to come home." And she said, "Look, not a problem. Just you come home and we're growing the business. So why don't you come in and help us until you figure out what you want to do?" And that was almost 27 years ago. And it started out with I had to start from the bottom. And I'm grateful for that too. I was grateful to have to know every part of it, because it led me to where I am now, which has been valuable growth experience. But taking the garbage out, getting everybody's lunch, doing all the filing, doing all the stuff that people may not appreciate so much. But once I got in there, and then I started to see what was happening in the classroom settings, and then they brought me in to experience it myself, it was an absolute game changer. The purpose was such a visceral, I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but it was such a very distinct, this is my passion. This is what I want to do. And the fact is that getting into golf, which I love, but that's such an I, me, my focused industry. I mean, you got to work on your game. To be in a classroom and watch people come in one way, much like you did 15 years ago, thinking, I don't want to be here. We're so accustomed to people coming through, and nobody wants to be in that space when they get there. But then at the end, to watch them, nobody wants to leave. And it's part of just getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. Part of it is maybe not feeling seen, and all of a sudden they're feeling seen. It's also the team dynamic that happens in there. It is something that is so incredibly special and was built organically.
I love the way you just framed that, that comfortable being uncomfortable. We talk about, that in general and at large all the time. But, I was reading something. One of my favorite books of the last few years was The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And he talks about how we as a society have gotten so attuned to being comfortable that we don't have the stresses that help us grow, that it is in the discomfort that we actually get the opportunity to grow and the opportunity to improve. And seeking discomfort, being comfortable with that, actually not viewing it like the mental, maybe the ninja move is, or the judo move is probably a better way to say it, is to actually use the discomfort as leverage for yourself, recognizing for it for what it is that it is indicating growth and it is indicating an expansion of capability. Do you have to like it? No, you don't. But the result is, quite frankly, can be profound and amazing. I'm thinking about something when you talked about golf, and I never really connected the dots until you just said this. The question I want to ask you is, what did failure teach you? And then the thing I'm thinking about is, like, golf is a game of profound failure, because you cannot beat the course, right? You're always going to be going back for one more, and a slight misstrike, this thing gets like, it just seems like it'd be a great place to learn resilience. What did you get, or what have you gotten from the game of golf and from failure over and over and over again?
No, I actually shoot an 18 pretty regularly. Just kidding.
Okay, that says it. I'm going to get a lesson right now. You and me, we're going out on the course. I've shot an 18 once before, and I never get off the first tee.
Oh man. Yeah, it's such a crazy game. Let's see, what did I learn through failing and failing and failing?
I'm not calling you a failure, by
Gosh,
the way. I'm just resilient.
I'm very comfortable with being the failure. But and here I just think about with life. I feel like a failure in so many areas on the day to day, but I believe it's the failure that helps me to achieve. With golf, I had to, it's so mental, and that's probably where my biggest struggle was. It's so mental that you can get in your head easily. And for me, I did have one great experience with Nancy Lopez, and I was a part of this golf tournament that she would go to every year. And so I got to be her little sidekick, and we would stay at the par three, and they would play Beat the Pro. But while we were waiting for the next foursome to come through, she would give me lessons.
Oh, wow.
And I know, how cool is that? And she's just the nicest, she talk about humble, kind. She's just amazing. But so she'd give me her clubs, and we would hit this par three. And I'll never forget her saying, Molly, when you finish that hole, it's done. And when you start the next hole, it's as though it's your very first hole. And I love that. You're going to make mistakes, but in golf, as everybody knows, you've got to put a million things together all at once and try and do that consistently. It's mind numbing. It's so challenging, but I love the idea of I'm going to fail. It's not even a matter of if, you're going to. How do you move through that? I'm a big fan of taking your task seriously, but not yourself. I think that's part of what golf has taught me is it's really easy to get wound up and in your head, and then you get mad at yourself, and that just starts that negative spiral. So I try to give myself a little bit of grace, and then when I get to the next hole, it's as though it's the very first time I've done it.
When you think about, the thousands of people you've spoken in front of and the thousands of people you have helped become more effective at communicating and engaging and connecting, what are some common myths about speaking or about presenting or about communicating that on this platform right now today, you just want to put a stake in the heart and dispel that myth and say it's not true?
Just as you said, put a stake in it and say that this isn't true, makes me think of so much of what people perceive when they see somebody that does a really good job. They think, oh, he's a natural. Oh, she's a natural. She's got the gift. People used to say that about my dad all the time. And no, I mean, he leaned into it, but that dude worked his tail off. He absolutely worked harder and had more work ethic. And that was probably another thing that I got to see is you don't just assume that you're really good just the way you are. You put in the effort. Would say he's a natural. I watched him go back into his office. He would shut the door and rehearse out loud as though he were delivering it for the very first time. And it could be a presentation he's delivered 150 times. It didn't matter. He always did the prep in advance. So people thought when he got out onto the stage or if he was in front of that audience that, oh man, he's good because he's got the gift. He leaned into something that he was passionate about. And I believe when we come from that place of passion, whatever it is, whatever industry you're in, you can't help but make an impact on other people.
Most leaders don't need more advice. They simply need clarity. That's what the Vision to Victory scorecard is all about. It's free, it's fast, and it gives you a clear picture of where you are and what's next. Start now at clarityalignmentexecution.com. Let's make sure that your next step forward is the right one. I'm struck by and reminded by, so often in today's time, people want to be an overnight success, or we laud and applaud those people who have made it, and we don't see, the countless hours in the gym or the countless hours, with sleepless nights and, not, worried about not making payroll or whatever that is, if they're an entrepreneur, and the work that goes into it. Because I like to think about the things I can control and the things I can't. What I can control is the prep. What I can control is being ready for something. And I can't be upset if I'm not, if I'm not ready, because I had the opportunity to be ready. I have no one to blame but
Yep.
myself, no one to blame. If you were having someone or talking with someone and they were telling you, I don't like this and I'll never be good at it, what is the little magic pixie dust that you would give them to help dispel that mindset?
I'll never be good enough. Oh. I want to go back quickly to something that you just said about your own experience about I can't point the finger at anybody but myself if I'm not ready. And I would highlight the fact that if it's important, you got to make the time. If it matters, you got to make the time. People are like, I'm too busy. You make the time to do the prep. And Dusty, you do that in spades. You are, even just getting ready for this podcast, I can't tell you the check-ins, the touches, the little things that you do prior to us doing what we're doing right now it allows the person who you're interviewing, by the way, to feel quite peaceful. So if our job is to if that's your job is to do things for other people, you do it in spades. It's just, I want to highlight that. If you're thinking about the person who says, I'm never going to be good enough, my heart breaks for that person, for those people. It makes me think of two things. Number one is we tend to have a critic on our shoulder instead of a coach. And in our program, we really like to highlight the coach mentality. But when we have these conversations in our minds while we're speaking, there's often the one that's coming out, but then you have that one that's assessing what you're doing and usually in a negative way. That's the critic. And I believe that if we would change having a critic and change it into the coach, a coach is more going to say, yeah, you got to work on these things, but here's the things you're doing really well too. And the coach wants to see you succeed, whereas a critic doesn't. So a lot of people say, oh, you're going to criticize me or you're going to critique me. No, we want to coach you. And for the person who says, I'm never going to be good enough, it breaks my heart because it's the thing we do the most. The thing we do more than breathe and blink is communicate. And whether it's in our homes, whether it's with a client, whether it's in the grocery store, wherever we are, we're communicating. And if somebody says, I'm never going to be good enough, I want to change that tape in their head to saying, look, I struggle with this, but I'm going to put these steps into place. And when people make it a priority, the change happens. It's crazy how fast the change can start to take place. But I also believe that part of what has created such an angst and I'm not good enough mentality is debilitating our ability to communicate. And there's never going to be a software update or any AI that's going to take the place of human connection. We worked with a group it was a young emerging leaders program at a very large organization that will remain nameless. This group of people, it's a 3-year program. They all Ivy League schools. It was Brown, Harvard, Yale, you name it. And they had great LinkedIn profiles, great social media stuff, and really good at what they do. When we came into this space together, 12 people, they were among their peers. When they stood up to speak, just beads of sweat it broke my heart. Nobody could do this or this. It's because of technology that is pulling people back so much. Anyhow, those kids in that moment in front of their peers felt that they're never going to be good enough when it comes to this. And I truly believe if we want to inspire the next generation, it's going to be really easy for our kids to set themselves apart if they know how to do these two things.
You've probably witnessed more transformations and great unlocking of capability, in your lifetime and in your experience than most will ever be privileged enough to see. Without, revealing names or any specific stories, do you have a favorite transformation story or something that just gripped you emotionally and it wasn't because of you, but it's just a privilege to be part of the space where someone was able to make that transformation? Do you have any that immediately come to mind?
I mean, there's some that I'll never forget because you remember a lot of the stories that you hear, but it's every week. There's somebody who comes in with I was voluntold to be here. And really, maybe they got a promotion, so they know they're going to have to be speaking in front of their team or clients more often. In the 46 years that we've been teaching this course, there have been 2 times where somebody was so debilitated by it that they quit their job. And that, again, is an absolute heartbreaker. Now that's in 46 years. It's been a while. But when someone comes through who is just absolutely has that transformation where they just didn't want to be there, it often, without telling, you don't want me to tell the specific story, but it's when their head and heart click. It's a lot of times for people, they feel like they have to be somebody different. As we're having the conversation, I can tell you one story with a gentleman he's a doctor. And when he came through our course, this was probably, 7 or so years ago. He said, I came through this course because I wanted you to teach me how to be a really good communicator. I wanted you to help me put filters up because I wanted to get up and be this amazing communicator. And he too is doing a podcast and all these things. And he was good with his patients. He just was really uncomfortable in public. And he said, what I realized going through this course is it's not about putting filters up. It's actually pulling these filters down so that I can be more who I am. And for me to see that from his perspective was such an aha for me. There's another gentleman who came through our course, and it was one of our open sessions. So that's people from all different companies. So he came through this course, and when he got there, there were 4 or 5 other people who had their PhDs, and he never went to college. So he came through the whole time thinking, I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. I don't do this. And Dusty, his final presentation, I will never forget. And he used the analogy of what he does. And even though his job, his role may seem insignificant, without his role, nothing else happened in their organization. And so sometimes people feel like if their role is so simple, so small that they don't earn a seat at the table type of thing. And he got a standing ovation because you could see his sense of pride and his belonging. And it doesn't matter what anybody's diploma says. And for him, that meant something. But he realized after the 2.5-day experience that he is equally as good as everybody else that was around the table. So to watch that was incredible.
Well, thanks for sharing. And, it's hard to ask for the stories because they are so deeply personal and they're very individual. What I love that what you just double clicked on though is the connecting of the head and the heart and the getting out of the way of our own selves and other people's values or determination of worth and really getting that connection going. I want to pivot us real quick, or as we draw our time to a close, I want to go some rapid fire questions. So I've got a few that I want to put you on the spot about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. What is a book that you believe that every leader should read?
Our book, The $1 Million Toolbox. Yes, that is a shameless plug, but it is such a great presentation Bible, so to speak. It's an easy read. It's very applicable. I love that. The 5 a.m. Club, I've read it a couple of times, listened to it a couple of times, but there were a couple of things that changed me personally during the pandemic. And one of them was this article that said, get up at 5 a.m. every day for 30 days and watch your life change. And so that's where the 5 a.m. Club book came into play. And then after that, because we were in COVID and lockdown and nobody knew what was going on, I read this great article that talked about take one thing that's just for yourself, for nobody else. It's not for your dog, for your spouse. It's just for you. and make it a part of your everyday habits. So Atomic Habits is another great book that helped me after I read that article. And so during the pandemic, I made a point to get up at 5 a.m. every day. And then I live near the beach, so I would go to the beach and watch the sunrise. And that was just for me. And it became my sanctuary. It was incredible. I met some of the greatest people who have now become my board of directors, so to speak, not surfboard, but a board of directors. It changed me in who I am. And I'll never forget walking down the street and seeing there's a lot of construction going on. And there was this one particular guy. People joke with, they make fun of me. I'm definitely a lot like my dad in the fact that I wave at everybody. I assume we're in a small town. I wave at everybody. But I would see this person and we would wave at each other every day. And it made me really realize my passion is I love to help people feel seen if they don't feel seen, if they want to feel seen. And just that moment of interaction with this young man who was sitting on a roof and putting this house together, and me and walking to the beach, it just became this really cool, special moment between two strangers, which I just love that so much. And I know you're talking about books, but just going back to our course, I love it when people come in as strangers and walk away changed forever for having had the experience together.
Those are two great ones. And I'm really stuck on this, kind of that definition of personal purpose around love to help people feel seen, if they want to be, of course, but like that being the thing that lights your fire and really gives you personal meaning and joy. And it's not even about you. That's super cool. That kind of puts a bow around everything we've been talking about. What's a life lesson or a leadership lesson you had to learn the hard way?
If I was carving out my path and my journey, I wouldn't have put me where I am right now. As you know, some of it came by default, being in a family business. And I remember about 16 years ago that I was asked, do I want to run this company? And I said, no. I mean, I was a new mom. No, very clear. No, I do not. Life takes a journey. And as I kept getting involved in the business, and it's all I've ever known. And of my oldest sister who passed away, she and I worked in the company for many, many years. And she was the one who was supposed to run it. And she is from where she is, but she was supposed to be the one to run it. And then when my father passed away, and so the baton was passed again, and just having my mom pass away, she wasn't running the business, but she's part of that legacy. And so it put me in this role. So, man, I've failed, but I can tell you my greatest accomplishment has been hiring the right people, and the right people with the right heart, with their eye on the mission of being others focused. One of our core values is being humbly confident. We all know that we don't know everything, but we do have the right people in place, and that makes a huge difference.
You mentioned Anne, and so I'm going to ask, and I love how you refer to her as the chief angel officer for the organization. What's the most important lesson you ever learned from Anne?
She taught me so much about grace, being graceful, going through hard stuff with grace and presence. And listen, some of her greatest lessons that she taught me was when she was battling cancer. She'd be going to chemo or radiation, and number one, she would dress even if she didn't feel like it. And when we would walk in the doors together, she would ask others about their journey. Tell me about your journey. Tell me about how you're doing. I mean, I couldn't believe that in the midst of what she had going on, that she still had other people at the forefront and wanting to meet them where they were. I'm happy for her, but she's definitely very present still.
What's a cause or an organization that you are passionate about supporting?
There's two. One is St. Jude's Children's Hospital, that one has been, for our family, has been something that we've been involved with for many years, and also hospice. I love what those angels do on this earth, and not just because of what I've gone through the past few years, but I was a part of working as a volunteer with them for many years, and just love what they do.
I'm having a conversation in a few weeks with someone who's a hospice chaplain, and I can't wait to talk to her because it's such a calling and such a gift to be able to care for someone during that stage and the families during that stage. So I love that those are two that resonate and have resonated with you for years. Molly, if our audience wants to learn more about you or about your organization and what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can go to tyboyd.com, or you can get in touch with anyone in our office. Everything's on our website, but feel free to check me out on LinkedIn, and I personally will make sure that I get back in touch with everybody. But if anybody has any questions as far as whatever your scenario is, whatever that might be, I'd love to help you.
Thank you for gracing us with the lessons that you've learned and the stories that you have been part of because of those impact that your dad had from age 5.5 all the way through. I'm deeply appreciative of your investment of time today, and know firsthand how much a life can change when you learn to connect and not just communicate at people. So thanks for sharing a little bit of your journey, and I highly encourage anyone who's remotely interested in maybe volunteering themselves to find a coach for their shoulder as opposed to the critic. There's a great way to do that with Ty Boyd. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Dusty. You took me down some roads I hadn't thought about in a long time. So it was really nice being able to have the conversation with you. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. If today's episode gave you something to think about, something to apply, then there's more where that came from. Head over to arcusgroup.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's where we share tools, insights, and our leadership frameworks to help you lead with more clarity, more alignment, and more impact. No fluff, just what helps you lead better. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on Leadership Unlocked.